The question is, discuss the general composition of the atmosphere and describe the role of major components. What are the major components? Dust particles, water vapor, and some of the gases, primarily carbon and ozone, oxygen and nitrogen. What is the role of nitrogen?
Amino acids are formed due to nitrogen, and amino acids are in turn from proteins, which are the basis of
Plant growth.
In fact, animals also.
Animals growth also, okay. Huh? Nitrogen fixation, that is the same thing. You are forgetting the most important role of nitrogen.
Nutrition to plants.
If nitrogen is not there,
Cooling effect.
Sir, if nitrogen is not there, everything would have got inflammable.
yes, the entire atmosphere would have been burnt. हाँ, तो इंसुलेटर की तरह काम करता है नाइट्रोजन, बिकॉज ऑक्सीजन इज सपोर्टिव ऑफ बर्निंग. जब हवा मारते हो चूल्हे के अंदर तो क्या डालते हो एक्चुअल में? फू करते हैं तो आग ज्यादा जलती है, तो आप ऑक्सीजन की क्वांटिटी वहां पे बढ़ा देते हो. नाइट्रोजन बिहेव्स लाइक एन इंसुलेटर. So if nitrogen is not present in the atmosphere, the entire atmosphere would be burnt in just one flame. So it acts as an insulator apart from amino acid and nitrogen fixation in the soil through denitrifying bacteria. Then role of oxygen, obviously we know that. Carbon dioxide in terms of growth of plants, and plus as a greenhouse effect, atmospheric phenomenon. Then in dust particles, yes, hygroscopic nuclear for the cloud formation, and plus its role on scattering, diffusion, its role on albedo, its role on absorption of terrestrial radiation as well as solar radiation. हाँ, करके आराम से कर सकते हैं. गैसेस का करें, रोल ऑफ गैसेस, द परमानेंट गैसेस एंड वेरिएबल गैसेस, और फिक्स्ड गैसेस एंड वेरिएबल गैसेस, उसमें बात करेंगे हम. और वेरिएबल गैसेस का रोल, वाटर वेपर का रोल इन टेम्परेचर, हीट रेगुलेशन, इन वाटर, रोल ऑफ वाटर वेपर, सॉरी,
Like a blanket, not letting it too dry or too warm or too cold.
exactly the same greenhouse effect, and plus absorption of radiation, plus the most important role of water vapor is in its creation of storms through latent heat of condensation. इस तरह के क्वेश्चंस आते हैं, कई बार आप ब्लैंक हो जाते हैं. ठीक है, जो बहुत आसान सा क्वेश्चन होता है, बहुत सीरियसली आप पढ़े हुए नहीं होते हैं, तो दैट क्रिएट्स मोर प्रॉब्लम.
Ending this question.
हाँ,
Ending this question in terms of carbon dioxide, which is roughly constant, but still is increasing due to human activities, and taking it to the
ग्लोबल वार्मिंग. ओवरऑल कंपोजिशन की हम बात करेंगे. द कंपोजिशन इज चेंजिंग, दो द क्वांटिफाइड चेंज इज नॉट ह्यूज, येट इट्स इम्पैक्ट इज वेरी वाइड एंड लार्ज, which needs to be checked which is visible in the form of global warming, must be checked and all. This efforts लिए गए हैं लेकिन बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं है, kind of thing should be the concluding remarks.
How would we introduce this? How would we introduce?
Composition of the atmosphere is one of the most important component affecting weather phenomena.
So you can give one definition of atmosphere also, like atmosphere, then composition of atmosphere, then its impact.
नहीं, यहाँ पे एटमोसफेयर देना बहुत अच्छा नहीं होगा. कि व्हाट इज एटमोसफेयर, यू मीन टू से
when we are explaining general composition,
हाँ
just one line get it clear, and its composition का impact then on.
नहीं, पहले तो कंपोजिशन बनाना होगा. तो कंपोजिशन में you'll have to take the general composition. The general composition starts with the like lower layer of atmosphere around 80 kilometers, 99% of the atmosphere, which is roughly static. The composition is roughly static.
So that's structure or composition?
Is composition. Till 80 kilometers, the composition what you are talking about, the proportion of different components are roughly uniform. Thereafter, single out. I hope you remember that. Right? Oxygen layer, nitrogen layer, then you have hydrogen layer, helium and hydrogen on the top. So that differentiation. Then even within that, there are certain gases which are variable, there are certain gases which are static in their proportion. अब static क्या है, variable क्या है?
Starting we can just find out like 50 like oxygen, nitrogen. Because there's not much to write about.
नहीं, उसमें लिखना नहीं है ज़्यादा, लेकिन डिफरेंशिएशन ज़रूरी है. तो कंपोजिशन को हम 2-3 पहलू से देख सकते हैं. हेट्रोजिनस स्ट्रक्चर है, जैसे हेट्रोजिनस कंपोजिशन है, होमोजेनस कंपोजिशन है. 2 लेयर तो इस तरह से हम डिवाइड कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, उसमें फिर कंपोजिशन में फिर वेरिएबल कंपोजिशन है. फिर उसके बाद स्टैटिक कंपोजिशन में भी वेरिएशन है बिकॉज ऑफ ह्यूमन इंटरफेरेंस इन द प्रेजेंट डे. ये इस तरह से हम बात करेंगे. देन रोल ऑफ द components, major components. What do you mean by air mass? I hope we understand air mass. What do we mean by that? So here you don't need to only stop at the definition of air mass. You will have to half of the portion. Whenever a question is divided into 2 sections like this, that means suppose if it is a 10 marker question, so 5 marks would be allotted to what do you mean by air mass, and the 5 marks will be allotted to differentiate between the continental and maritime air mass with suitable examples. Right? So what do you mean by air mass? So you have to talk about air mass, you have to talk about its properties, you have to talk about thermodynamic modification, and maybe in a flow chart of air mass classification as well, in a nutshell. Right? Then you come to differentiate between continental and maritime. So obviously you'll have to talk about, first you can begin with a role of air mass in weather phenomena and climate. One of the most important component affecting weather phenomena. ठीक है, उसके बाद continental and maritime. So continental air mass summer season, continental air mass winter season. Continental air mass of tropical region, continental air mass of polar region. Right? Maritime air mass of tropical region, maritime of air mass of polar region. Then once they move from continent towards the oceans and maritime moving from ocean towards the continent, the kind of stability and instability they create. Like during summer season, someone will be unstable. During winter season, the same will be stable. For example, continental air mass during summer season, when they move and flow over oceanic areas, summer season, the oceanic areas, they will bring stability. Summer season, maritime air mass moving over the continental air mass will bring instability. So chances of rainfall, and that's why summer dominant rainfall is a common phenomena all over the earth. फिर उसके बाद एयर टाइम, जैसे मैरीटाइम एयर मास इन द पोलर रीजन, उसका समर इफेक्ट और विंटर इफेक्ट. उसके अंदर मोस्ट ऑफ द कॉन्टिनेंटल एयर मास विल बी लैकिंग इन मॉइस्चर कंटेंट. तो बेसिक प्रॉपर्टीज ड्राई होगी, समर में बहुत वार्म होगी रिलेटिवली, विंटर में बहुत कोल्ड होगी रिलेटिवली एज कम्पेयर टू इट्स मैरीटाइम काउंटर पार्ट. और उसको फिर एक्सप्लेन करते रहना है. ये सब आए थे थॉट्स की नहीं? ये सब थॉट्स आए थे दिमाग में? वेरी गुड. हाँ, एग्जाम्पल्स में कुछ भी ले लेंगे. सहारा डेजर्ट के एयर मास, जब हम कॉन्टिनेंटल एयर मास एट दी कॉन्टिनेंट की बात करेंगे, द ट्रॉपिकल रीजन, यू टॉक अबाउट सहारा डेजर्ट, दैट विल बी द कॉन्टिनेंटल एयर मास ऑफ ट्रॉपिकल रीजन. नॉर्थ अमेरिकन एयर मास, कॉन्टिनेंटल एयर मास ऑफ temperate or polar region. Siberian air mass, continental air mass of polar region. Then you talk about maritime. So maritime tropical air mass will be high pressure zones. Talk about Azores high, talk about Hawaiian high, talk about Bermuda high. Then talk about the winter and summer effect on that. Maritime air mass of polar region. Then talk about that the North Pacific region, which are relatively calm areas. North Atlantic region, near Arctic oceans and all. ठीक है. एयर मास के कंक्लूजन में क्या लिखेंगे हम?
Modifications in the source regions are altering the air mass.
Beautiful.
And hence they are changing the entire dynamics too.
गुड. सो जैसे अभी जो प्रेजेंट डे में एयर मास का हम कंपोनेंट बताते हैं, सो इफ दैट इज लाइंग ओवर द कॉन्टिनेंटल एरियाज, सो बिकॉज ऑफ एक्सेसिव अमाउंट ऑफ इंटरफेरेंस by humans with respect to environment in the form of settlement, deforestation, उसके diversion of rivers and courses has affected the quality and content of air mass. Pollution की हम बात करेंगे, which must be properly checked. जब भी हम concluding remarks में करेंगे, possible you shouldn't be rigid about that, so that every answer of yours should not reflect a monotony. तो जब हम कंक्लूडिंग रिमार्क्स में करेंगे तो विल ट्राई ऑलवेज टू ब्रिंग ह्यूमन मैन एनवायरमेंट रिलेशनशिप एज फार एज पॉसिबल. डोंट ट्राई टू एम्फेसाइज टू मच ऑन इट. गेटिंग माय पॉइंट? अब एयर मास में बहुत ज्यादा नहीं घुसेंगे हम, फिर ग्लोबल वार्मिंग को नहीं लाएंगे, इस तरह की चीजों को नहीं लाएंगे. ठीक है. मॉडिफिकेशन ऑफ एयर मास definitely a possibility, but continental limit will be continental areas. Least affected areas would be maritime. But maritime air mass, when you're talking about high, relatively very less, least in fact, if you talk about. Changing nature of storms and other weather component have really created a big challenge for humans' growth, development and sustenance. इस तरह की बात वहाँ पे हम आ जाएंगे. ठीक है. Climatic classification. Climatic classification. Hope we understand this thing very clearly, and this also. What is classification? Organization
of various planets according to
certain homogeneous characteristics, right? So basically what we are trying, what do we mean by it? So what we are trying to find out the regions of homogeneities, same like air mass, within and distinctiveness outside with respect to the climatic components. Finding out the regions, components or elements. Right? If we try to understand this part itself, it will be very easy for you to, for example, several questions will be critically analyze Koeppen's classification. We have 3 names mentioned in the syllabus: Koeppen's classification, Thorndike classification and Travartha classification. Right? So if we understand these basics without actually jumping into the actual classification, it will be very easy for us to actually critically analyze or present a classification of Koeppen. What are the limitations of Koeppen or Thorndike or Travartha? Right? इस तरह से किसी का भी क्रिटिसिज्म आ जाता है तो बेसिक जो डेटा होगा दैट विल बी कॉमन. For example, if you are writing, all these students will be writing the common component as far as the what the actual presentation of Corpens and Thorndike. Where you can differ is this part. Because once we understand this part, it will be very easy for you to have a balanced thought on any classification. Right? So now, first here you see the components and elements, homogeneity, finding out the homogeneity. So if you look at the components and elements, there are several elements which influences climate of a region, right? Several factors you can name, all the elements which we have talked about: temperature, precipitation, then atmospheric disturbances, presence of latent heat or water vapor present, air mass, atmospheric circulation, insolation, मतलब कुछ भी लो, pressure, winds, all are climatic elements. Now look at here, each element is further influenced by a large number of factors. Right? Large number of factors. Now, to quantify such large number, look at the combination then. If you go for permutation and combination, let's take a single temperature. So you have at least 8, 10, 12 factors which affect temperature. If you take precipitation, so only the most two important visible component. So if you take the precipitation is further affected by several factors. So if you take these two, there will be 100 combinations, more than that, right? So to quantify such large number of factors and factors of factors is next to impossible. यहीं से लिमिटेशन शुरू हो गई. Hope you understand, right? So next to impossible. Now, so what is left then? So what is this? Organization. You organize the quantifiable components of elements and see that, right? And now organization will be very difficult because of the reasons here. So what is the possible? What is the possibility left for the geographers to go for classification?
Macro level classification instead of going to in-depth.
Yes, overgeneralized. So the only overgeneralized theoretical presentation is possible. Now, whatever overgeneralized or theoretical, first that to include all the possible components is not possible. Right? Second thing is that among the generalized theories or generalized presentation, how will you judge? The quality of presentation. जैसे हम बात करेंगे कि कोपन के क्लासिफिकेशन में ये बढ़िया बात है, वो बढ़िया बात है, ये घटिया बात है, क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस की अगर हम बात करें, सो दैट इज द प्राइम एम. यहां पे हम चेक करेंगे उसको कि इफ वी जज द क्वालिटी ऑफ अ पर्टिकुलर प्रेजेंटेशन, दैट मीन्स एनी क्लासिफिकेशन. So what is the basis of we as a layman or as a geographer judging that classification?
Observed reality.
Hmm? Observed reality is again very complex. Let's say reality may be in the mountainous region. Look at Uttarakhand, look at Himachal Pradesh, look at Jammu and Kashmir. So overgeneralized features of all these three states are that they are mountainous states. Look at the intra-regional variation, inter-regional variation, huge. Its impact, the quality of agricultural in that area, very different. The quality of soil, very different. Kashmir is more affected by glaciers. Even within Uttarakhand, the higher reaches are very much affected by glacial activities, and the lower regions are affected by riverine activities. So the quality of soil, the coarseness of soil, suitability of soil will be different. For human perception, if you see, even the human nature and behavior and attitude is different. Right? So that makes things much more complex. So fundamental judgment, when we try to judge on the quality of presentation, would be its intended use or application. That means what the generalized version tries to address. No, that is one component, one application. Right? It's not about one. It may be various. For example, one classification may be suitable for the botanist, right? But may not be suitable. इसलिए कोपन क्लासिफिकेशन का एक बहुत बड़ा ये स्टेटमेंट आता है, because his classification is based on vegetation. So it may be very well suited for botanist or biologist, but may not at all be suitable for meteorologist. Hope you understand. Suppose there are some classification which is again impossible, which can satisfy both botanist and meteorologist, yet it may not satisfy anthropologist. Because the demand of anthropologist will be different, that in which particular climate the ape has greater chances to transform into itself into the present humans, bipedal humans. Right? What are the perfect climatic conditions for the evolution of a species from a very small Cro-Magnon to the larger one, or the bipedal, very sound mind bag, or larger brain size? So that will be the basic ingredients of an anthropologist. He will be looking for different things. So the biologist will look at a different perspective, the metallurgist will look at a different perspective, the anthropologist will look at it, the social geographers. Hope you understand. What is the impact of climate on human behavior? So that will be the main concern of social geographers, which may not be at all satisfied when you classify climate with respect to its perfect example of its impact in the form of, let's say, vegetation. Vegetation is the most common basis which climatologists have taken to classify climate. So vegetation in the older times has been different. In the medieval earth history has been different. In the modern and postmodern it is different. So present day vegetation, if treated as a source of classification or basis of classification, it will be completely useless, because the way it has got modified, right? Hardly any virgin forest areas are found on the surface of the earth. So that way, the present day, it will not be at all applicable. When you talk about economic geographers, their requirement will be different. Hopefully we understand it. So that use itself, when we talk about primarily any activity of human is basically intended to understand the nature with respect to humans only. हम लोग इसमें इंटरेस्टेड नहीं है कि अर्थ का क्लाइमेट सन को क्या इफेक्ट कर रहा होगा. हम लोग इसी चीज में इंटरेस्टेड हैं आज भी कि अर्थ का क्लाइमेट ह्यूमंस को किस किस तरह से इफेक्ट करेगा. सो ह्यूमन एक्टिविटीज इटसेल्फ आर वेरिड, राइट. हम जब इकोनॉमिक ज्योग्राफी की बात करते हैं तो यहाँ पे एग्रीकल्चर आ जाएगा, राइट, कि हाउ अ क्लाइमेट, पर्टिकुलर क्लाइमेट विल हैव इट्स इंपैक्ट ओवर एग्रीकल्चर, हाउ अ पर्टिकुलर क्लाइमेट विल हैव इट्स इंपैक्ट ओवर वाटर रिसोर्सेज, right? Settlement will be here, right? The attitude foundation, the birth rate. For example, do climate have something to do with birth rate? But again, it is very subjective, right? Agriculture itself, do climate have its impact over agriculture? Yes, but look at the tropical agriculture and see Australia. Look at the temperate agriculture and see Canada. Getting my point? Even Japanese, if you see that. Look at the desert agriculture and see Israel. Like we are just trying to correlate the man-environment relationship also here, right? So this overall scheme of things become very, very complex. So whenever we go for critical analysis, we must keep these things in mind. So if a particular classification meant for a particular use is good for the intended use, with respect to the intended use, it is fine, we'll say that from that perspective. But whenever going for critical analysis, we'll definitely take care of the fact that it is not suitable for other purpose, right? So basically, if you see, what do we mean by climatic classification? So divide Earth into different regions. This is basically a regional approach. There are two major approaches in geography to study the Earth's surface: systematic and regional approach. When we say regional approach, we divide the Earth into different regions, and we try to study that particular region with respect to man-environment relationship, right? In systematic, we take a single activity of humans, let's say agriculture. When agriculture is studied all the way from equator till polar region, that is systematic approach. When we take equatorial region, so it is a single region, and then we try to see different activities of humans, कि वहाँ पे एग्रीकल्चर कैसा है, इंडस्ट्री कैसी है, पॉपुलेशन कैसा है, बर्थ रेट कैसा है, and all that. So when we take entire human activities of a particular region, that is regional approach. So climatic classification itself is a regional approach. Why do we need classification? Why do we need it? That means primarily objectives of classification. तो किसी भी बुक को पढ़ लो, किसी भी नोट्स को पढ़ लो, 2-3 क्रिशफील्ड्स का जो दिया हुआ है, 3-4 रिट्रीवल ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन वो डाला हुआ है बस. मेजोरिटी ऑफ दी हमने देखा है, जैसे जो स्टूडेंट्स के नोट्स में भी देखा है, सो वही 3-4 क्रिशफील्ड में लिखा हुआ, 3-4-5 2 बेसिकली 3 वर्ड लिखा हुआ, उसी 3 वर्ड को घुमा फिरा के. अब हम लोग इसको जब एज ए ज्योग्राफर देखते हैं तो यू कैन हैव सेवरल थिंग्स. सपोज कि हम खुद अगर क्लाइमेट को क्लासिफाई करना चाहें तो हमारा प्राइमरी ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या होगा? Sorry? Settlement pattern, that's one aspect.
Vegetation, cropping pattern.
So primary activities of pupils.
That is understanding the impact of climate on various human activities. One हो गया, एक objective हो गया. हाँ? So again, सारा कम हो गया. Development of the impact of climate on the development of region. That's sorry. First organization होगा. First objective or the why do we need classification is basically to organize vast array of data into an orderly fashion. Right? Second, to understand the impact of climate over various human activities and the way homogeneous climate can produce heterogeneous activities to comprehend the interference of human or to comprehend the response of humans. Humans differently in similar environment and similarly in different environment. And the third one is help in retrodiction and prediction. Again, is a part of man-environment relationship. What has happened in the past? No, what would have happened in the past? And prediction, exactly antonyms alone. So, for example, in the equatorial region, certain type of climate is producing this behavior, right? So, such climates would have produced same behavior in the past. Let's say, suppose in the present day, we can see that some of the tribals are getting on the verge of extinction, right? So, how they have coped up with the environment, and what were the flaw in their process to tackle the environment. That means if we have learned that some of the civilization has disappeared on the surface of the earth, that is retrodiction. We can try to correlate that they might have followed the same path and the environmental wrath might have been slightly changed and they might not have been be able to cope up with that. That's why they might have extincted. Let's say dinosaurs also. तो उस टाइम में हुआ तो उस दिन हम लोग देखे थे वीडियो जिसमें उसमें इतना तो बताया था कि the amount of oxygen must have been very high at that time. That's why the size of the mammals and all were much bigger than the present day. So that is again in the future, if we try, somehow the atmospheric oxygen is increasing, तो हम लोग सब मतलब खली पैदा होंगे फिर लोग, kind of thing, right? But we can easily see that the genetic makeup is affecting the humans as well as other animals also. तो इस तरह के retrodiction and prediction में बेहतर होता है, and that leads to better research facilities. Again, vital for human being. Then is to facilitate communication. For example, how can I tell you that the equatorial region people have higher birth rate? I can easily communicate to you. How? Because I have the data with respect to that. Because in an area where temperature and humidity is very high, the death rate will be high. So communication becomes very easy, right? If death rate is high, automatically birth rate will be higher. Communication. I'm explaining even to laymen who don't need to be an expert in geography or anthropology. I can tell that. For example, in social aspect, very often I quote that religion has nothing to do with high birth rate. It has nothing to do with large number of children. It is purely a product of socio-economic condition. Religion is generally projected as a means to protect themselves. कि हमारे रिलीजन में ऐसा माना है, हमारे रिलीजन में सब, बाकी चीज़ों में कुछ भी फॉलो ना करें लेकिन बच्चा पैदा करने में फटाक से फॉलो कर लेंगे. So that is basically a human cover up, but reality is somewhat different. So that is how you can communicate. So instead of, suppose as a planner, you becoming a planner, if you want to plan in a Muslim community that there should be lesser number of children, so if you don't understand the basic reason, you would try to destroy the religion itself. Getting my point? If you believe that religion is the main reason, then you try to destroy the religion itself, which is impossible. So you understand, like खाप पंचायत की हम बहुत बार बात करते हैं कि खाप पंचायत is not that greatest worst thing on the surface of the earth. It is basically an outcome of a certain socio-economic setup which leads to a certain mindset. So you have to attack that socio-economic setup and that mindset rather than attacking Khap Panchayat itself. Huh? Getting my point? So that communication, it facilitates communication.
And so we explain the response of humans differently in similar environment and similarly in different environments.
Yes, like for example, it is the role of human. Suppose we understand that fine in the high humidity and high temperature, the birth rate will be high. Now look at Indonesia and Malaysia. High humidity, high rainfall, yet they have much lesser birth rate. They are more grown, developed and sustainable as compared to Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda and all. Congo, Guinea, Cameroon, those all have roughly similar climate. So similar climate, human response is different. Right? Different climate, human response may be similar. For example, agriculture in Canada, agriculture in Punjab and Haryana. Right? Now, different economic setup, similar economic setup but different result. All the agrarian society of the world in general will be conservative, orthodox. Right? Introvert society. But look at Australia and Canada, again exception. So that reflects human response to the environment. So in general we have, suppose organized data, we have concluded the theoretical perspective is that a society which is deriving its economy primarily from primary sources would be like this. But you defy that, you have exceptions there. So you better start this way. That is human response to a particular socio-economic setup. Hope we are getting that. Methods of classification or approaches of classification. There are three approaches: empirical, genetic, and applied. Empirical, on the basis of observable phenomena. When classification is done on the basis of observable phenomena which can be observed, like the best example is the Greek classification of climate, the earliest. Huh? Whenever is classification is done, for example, presently we are doing, so we can take into account the observable phenomena. So that's why Greek classification in this Kalimata bola hai usne. That is torrid, temperate, and frigid zone. What is the observable phenomena here? Temperature. So temperature, torrid is the tropical zone in between 23.5 to 23.5, temperate 23.5 to 66.5, frigid 66.5 to that. Now, if you look at the intra-regional variation, completely ignored. Look at the precipitation, completely ignored. All the area within the tropics are not similar. Yet this climatic classification has ruled almost till 17th century, 18th century. What is it? Overgeneralized. Very easy to understand, very easy to comprehend. And you can go for it. So that's what empirical is all about. Observable phenomena where the factors which can be observed, again here, highly generalized. Right? And if it misses out the genetic aspect or applied aspect, there is no use. Do you have this applied also? Okay, what is applied? Genetic is where the causative factors of a climatic type becomes the basis for classification. Becomes the reason behind the classification, becomes the source of classification. Right? What has produced a particular type of climate? If that causative factors are included into it, that classification becomes genetic. Genesis, reasons behind the origin of a particular climate. Now, what are the components which must be taken? Observable or relatively quantifiable, non-quantifiable. What are the observable and quantifiable components? Temperature, precipitation, that's it. Primarily. And non-quantifiable? Beautiful. Air, water vapor nahi aayega. Water vapor to precipitation. Air mass, wind, atmospheric circulation, frontal formation, and all, right? So that will be role of jet streams. All these will be, you cannot quantify it.
So is this due to technological inefficiency or are they not non-quantifiable?
Non-quantifiable in the sense that the actually, if you look at the air mass, over generalized function or impact of air mass can be made, but otherwise like proper quantification that fine air mass इतना thick होगा, इतना ये होगा, तो फिर उसमें आएगा moisture content कितना है, temperature कितना है. So different components will affect the different. What is the source region of an air mass? Whether it is continental air mass or maritime air mass. If the maritime air mass actually is unstable or like several factors, then that's why you cannot quantify. For temperature, roughly you can quantify. For precipitation, you can easily measure it. Okay, this area has this much precipitation. Now, going behind the reasons of this variation in precipitation becomes non-quantifiable. Right? So, when you include now, look at here, it becomes very, very complex. Classification, and if genesis is not taken, then classification itself is incomplete. Hope we understand, right? And very often the climatic classification has ignored this part only for overgeneralization, basically to easy understand. Applied, that means application of the classification. With respect to various phenomena, which we already have talked about. Settlement के लिए अलग होगा, agriculture के लिए अलग होगा, water resources के लिए अलग होगा. Now, if you look at settlement, so climate is just one factor affecting settlements also. Agriculture, again one factor. Climate is just one factor, not the entire factor, sole factor. There are several other factors. Landforms, soils, then human activities, kind of vegetation you have in that area, the relative gene pool level, right? So all these factors, then moisture content, then soil की अपनी 50 variety, 50 characteristics होती है. अब उसकी moisture holding capacity कितनी है, right? Water holding capacity है कि ज़्यादा है तो फिर aeration कम होगा. फिर the human interference आ जाएगा. With the settlement itself in that area will affect the soil. Diversion of streams by humans in that area. Right? So that's why the application, every aspect becomes almost incomplete. So can we correlate now applied? There may be some classification which may be both empirical and applied as well. Right? Some may be genetic and may be applied but may not be empirical. So what?
What was the question you asked before explaining it, right? You asked something regarding empirical, right?
Rewind करो video. Empirical.
Probably आप relation पूछ रहे थे कि आप इन दोनों को कैसे correlate कर सकते हैं. Was it that?
No, perhaps I told that empirical and applied. Some may be both empirical and applied as well. Like this classification has both empirical as well as applied. Applied in the sense because at least the application of temperature can easily be understood relatively. Other factors are ignored. That's a different issue. So it will be suitable for something but may not be suitable for several other use. Right? जैसे ये है थोड़ा सा मेटेरोलॉजिस्ट के लिए सूटेबल होगा बट बॉटनिस्ट के लिए बिल्कुल ही नहीं होगा, ओवर जनरलाइज्ड है. Any ideal classification must include all these three approaches which is almost impossible. Hence, the classification of climate should be seen as an effort of human to generalize the complex natural phenomena for our own utility. That means if you look at climate, is basically a natural phenomena. Classification is basically human ingenuity. नहीं, वो क्लाइमेट है, नेचुरल फिनोमेना है, हम उसको सिंप्लीफाई करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. सो बेसिकली द सिंप्लीफाइड वर्जन ऑफ complex reality. Complex reality is natural phenomena. Simplified version is classification. Come again? Ingenuity. Human effort. The brainchild of human. Up till here we are clear, right? Now come to the Köppen's classification. The most popular, even in the present day, and one of the earliest classification is basically Köppen's classification. A Russian-born German climatologist. Presented several classification in between 1900 to 1936. Initial classification was based on the vegetation map of D. Candolle 1874 में दिया था इसे. Believes that vegetation is the most important visible, quantifiable reflection of overall climate of a region. अब किस टाइप का हो गया ये? अप्रोचेज में कौन सा अप्रोच इसने लिया? अप्लाइड, राइट? सो हेंस अप्लाइड क्लासिफिकेशन. Used temperature and precipitation as criteria to classify the climate. अब क्या हो गया? ये अप्रोच कौन सा हो गया? एम्पेरिकल. नहीं, दैट इज ऑब्जर्वेबल. जेनेटिक में सब चीज लेंगे फिर, all the aspects. Temperature and precipitation is not the two only. There are several other. Soil हो जाएगा,
Sir, if we take insulation,
height हो जाएगी, altitude हो जाएगा.
sir, if we take insulation, then it is the genetic approach, right?
No, when we take the entire factor which produces a particular type of climate, that include the wind, that will include the pressure system. For example, if you want to go for desert climate, so temperature and precipitation is not the criteria on it. You'll have to talk about the high pressure belts, you'll talk about the subsidence. Even the moisture content in the air may be high, but yet it is not producing precipitation. So why precipitation is less, why temperature is high, or why temperature is less? When you include that, that becomes genetic. Temperature is simply observable phenomena, quantifiable phenomena, so that's how it becomes empirical. So first criticism is that it is not genetic. बोलने में क्या जाता है, बेचारे 36 साल तक इसी पे मेहनत की है, हम लोग 5 मिनट में उसकी धज्जी उड़ाएंगे, ठीक है? But always be very careful while criticizing. Don't be blatant in that. With all due respect, भैया आप वो 150 साल पहले देके गया है और उसको आज भी हमको पढ़ना पड़ रहा है. So he deserves some respect, नहीं? First classification in 1900. Write down that, a bit of it. The basis of this classification, the basis of this classification, it is plural. The basis of this classification was primarily temperature and precipitation. Temperature and precipitation, where he took temperature of the warmest month and the coldest month, warmest month and the coldest month, and precipitation of the driest month and the wettest month. On the basis of the map of de Candolle, he tried his best. He tried his best that his map of climatic classification or climatic region, the map of his climatic region, his climatic classification should coincides should coincides with the vegetation map of D. Candolle, with the vegetation map of D. Candolle. On these bases, he identified five climatic regions. First, megatherms. Megatherm. Megatherm, this is the region where rainfall and temperature both are very high. Megatherm. And the vegetative cover includes evergreen forest, tropical evergreen forest. Vegetative cover include tropical evergreen forest. This area is found primarily in the equatorial region of Congo Basin, Amazon Basin, and some islands of Southeast Asia. Next is xerophytes. Xerophytes. The area experiencing high temperature but very low precipitation are put into this category. They include arid and semi-arid regions of the world. Third one is mesotherm. Mesotherm, the areas between the tropical latitude or rather 23.5 कर दो उसको, confusion हो जाएगा वरना. The area between 23.5 to 45 degree latitude, both north and south. Areas between 23.5 to 45 degree latitude are included into this. They are basically warm temperate region. With moderate temperature and moderate rainfall. Temperature and rainfall. Then we have microtherm. Fourth is microtherm. Cool summer and cold winter region of regions represented by sorry, cool summer and cold winter regions represented by the temperate evergreen coniferous forest or taiga. Temperate evergreen coniferous or taiga. Next is Hekistothum. Hekistothum, Hekisto, Hekistothum. The regions of extreme cold areas. Especially tundra, are represented by mosses and lichens, etc. Lichens, lichens भी पढ़ते हैं कोई उसको बायोलॉजी में. मैथमेटिक्स वाले का बायोलॉजी के लिए प्रोनाउंसिएशन बहुत बुरा होता है. So this is the 5 major regions. Now here if you see, if you go for critical analysis, भरे पड़े नहीं. Now if you look at the first, the only one type is representing precipitation. Rest 4 are based on temperature. Thumb, जहाँ पे thumb आ जाता है, that is temperature. Megathumb, mesotherm, microtherm, hekistotherm. Basically a very generalized classification, slightly better than you can say the Greeks of torrid and frigid and temperate. The only one type is dependent on precipitation, that is xerophytes. वो लिख लो इस चीज को. See, the only one type among these 5 mentioned is based on precipitation, whereas the rest are based on temperature. Next is 1918 classification. He presented a much more detailed classification. 1918. He presented a much more detailed classification. In 1918, and has changed his basis slightly. Basis slightly. Where we included mean monthly and annual temperature and precipitation. Besides he include the seasonal variation in these observable phenomena. Seasonal variation in these among these observable phenomena. However, he kept stuck with the vegetation map. In this he include the letters. This time he includes letters, and mentioned the quantifiable, mentioned the figure of temperature and rainfall, temperature and precipitation rather, right. The first letter is A, big letter A. Tropical forest. Here mean monthly temperature must be more than 18 degrees Celsius. Must be more than 18 degrees Celsius. B, dry climate. Evaporation exceeds precipitation on yearly basis. Evaporation exceeds precipitation on yearly basis. C, warm temperate. Warm temperate. Average temperature of warmest month must be more than 10 degrees Celsius. Coldest temperature or coldest month, average temperature of coldest month temperature must be in between 0 to 18 degrees Celsius. Then D, cool temperate. Cool temperate. Average temperature of coldest month less than or equal to 0 degree. Warmest month more than 10 degrees Celsius. More than 10 degrees Celsius. Coldest 0 degree. Less than or equal to 0 degree. Or warmest more than 10 degrees Celsius. E. Next is E, that is polar.
So like it's more than 10 because
हाँ.
it is range.
नहीं, more than 10 का वहाँ पे जहाँ पे coldest month 0 के नीचे चला जाएगा, warmest month 40 डिग्री थोड़ी जाएगा. So more than 10 होना चाहिए. Less than 10 अगर warmest month है, that becomes polar. जो next classification है उसका E. E, polar climate. Where the warmest month must have less than 10 degrees Celsius temperature. So if you look at the criteria here, 5 criteria, it actually appears very complex. But if you correlate it, the tropical areas is more than 18 degrees Celsius. Then 0 to 18 degrees Celsius if you look at the thermal regions. Then more than 10 degrees Celsius is the, अगर आप कंपेयर करो इस चीज को याद करने के लिए कभी भी, तो ए को क्या लिया है इसने? The warmest month temperature throughout the year must be more than 18 degrees Celsius. उसके बाद B को तो खैर ड्राई लिया है, B को लेना ही नहीं. C में अगर आ जाइए, that is warm temperate. So अब 0 से 18 होना चाहिए इसका. And warmest month must be more than 10 degrees Celsius. D में क्या कह रहा है? Warmest month must be more than 10 degrees Celsius. लेकिन यहाँ पे क्या कर दिया है? Less than or equal to 0 degree. अब E में क्या कर दिया है? Less than 10 degrees Celsius. Even warmest month must be less than 10 degrees Celsius. Warmest month 2 में more than 10 degrees Celsius, 1 में more than 18 degrees Celsius. Hopefully we can understand. A में है कि वार्मेस्ट मंथ मस्ट बी मोर देन 18 डिग्री सेल्सियस। सी में है वार्मेस्ट मंथ मस्ट बी इन बिटवीन, मस्ट बी मोर देन 10 डिग्री सेल्सियस। डी में है मस्ट बी मोर देन 10 डिग्री सेल्सियस। ई में है must be less than 10 degrees Celsius, right? So this zone, he doesn't talk about winter less, because winter can't be possible when the all throughout the year the temperature is more than 18 degrees Celsius. So it is a winterless zone. When he talks about the coldest month here, he doesn't talk about, there's no need to talk about the coldest month here. When he talks about coldest month here, he talks about the coldest month must have a temperature of 0 to 18 degrees Celsius. Getting that? Now here he talks about must be less than or equal to 0 degrees Celsius. Since here the warmest month has less than 10 degrees Celsius, there is no need to talk about. So here this is basically summerless, this is basically winterless, then 2 is, you define that, temperate or tundra region. Right? And then B को आप इसमें डाल दीजिए, that is again dry. So not much variation from the previous one अगर देखा जाए तो. Previous one में उसने मेगाथर्म मेसोथर्म वगैरह यूज किया है, but this time he is using letters. Right? Later on he used several smaller letters to produce many combinations to reflect the micro level climatic variations on the surface of the earth. A holistic classification may be presented as follows. अब जो इसका फिगर है वो आप उतार लीजिए. इसको मैं आपको याद करने में हेल्प करा दूंगा. Major types. First order, second order, मेजर टाइप्स में ए आ गया, इसमें ए एफ, ए डब्ल्यू, ए एम आ जाता है. सेकंड में बी आ गया, बी एस, एस यहाँ पे बड़ा है, बी डब्ल्यू, इसमें आ जाता है बी एस के, बी एस एच, बी डब्ल्यू के, बी डब्ल्यू एच. सी में आ जाता है सी एफ, सी एस, सी डब्ल्यू, इसमें आ जाता है सी एफ ए, सी एफ बी, उसके बाद डी में आ जाता है DF, DS, DW, DF में आ जाता है DFA, DFB एंड DFC। DS का कोई नहीं है, DWA, DWC, DWD। E में आ जाता है ET और ES। उसने एक अलग से ऐड कर दिया है, फिर H में आ जाता है विच इज माउंटेन क्लाइमेट। This is tropical rainy. This is dry climate. Humid mesothermal. Humid microthermal. Polar और snow climate. So what the smaller letters indicate? Smaller letters, if you see that, F is rainfall throughout the year. M stands for monsoon climate. W stands for winter dry. S stands for summer dry. In the B type has used letter S for a steppe, that is semi-arid, and W for desert. Then in smaller use H for hot desert, K for cold desert. Then he has used letter A, B, C, D to differentiate in the impact of continentality with decreasing rainfall. T for tundra, F for frost, permafrost, ETEF में जो लिया है इसने. Sorry? ET और हाँ फर S है, F है या S? ETEF परमाफ्रॉस्ट, और ETER भी कहीं पे यूज किया गया है. R is for permafrost, ET for tundra, that is polar region. ET. Now if you look at the generalized version, over a single continent of the climatic type, his classification can be 10, 30 degree, 45 degree, 65 degree and 90 degree. This is AF. Then he has classified this one AM, AW and BSH. BSH, desert. Then we have CF, CS Mediterranean type of climate, the most frequently asked. Then we have BS, desert, hot desert. Then here you have in between 60 to 65 DF, DW and DF, westerlies belt. Then it is एक और लाइन खींचना पड़ेगा 80 and 90. This will be ET, this will be EF or ER. हाँ DF, DW, DF, rainfall throughout the year. One is associated with westerlies belt, another is associated with cyclones, temperate cyclones, convergence zone. The most frequently asked type is this. This is what you call a Mediterranean climate. Found in between 30 to 45 degree north and 30 to 40 degree south latitude. Typical of summer dry. S stands for summer dry, W stands for winter dry. याद करना इजी है. F is rainfall throughout the year, right? M for monsoon, S for summer dry, W for winter dry. Look at here, he has not used that symbol AS, right? So where will you keep Tamil Nadu? Getting my point? Tamil Nadu is a region, and it's a big region in our country itself, which is falling in tropical region, having the megatherm temperature, yet it is summer dry and you have winter rainfall. Appraisal में जब हम की बात करेंगे कि overall analysis of Köppen's classification, that is critical analysis as well. So quality is what? The most simplified version of the complex reality. So what does it have positive? Is that easy to comprehend, easy to understand, even for elementary students. Best reflection of the overall impact of climate must be seen in vegetative cover. Hence, his application has application at greatest level. But since it is simplified, it is overgeneralized. Right? Has linear vegetative zones, which may be but little reflection of intra-regional variation. Far away from practical reality or observable reality. क्लियर है? But intra-regional variation on the linear zones. Intra-regional. Inter-regional variation on broader level he has talked about. Look at here AM. For example, इसमें लिख सकते हैं. For example, he assigns symbol AM, right? पूरा ही लिख लो. He assigns symbol AM to denote the climate of tropical east coast, right? East coast. Now look at here as AM. All the eastern coast areas of this region do not experience monsoon climate. In fact, majority of areas receive rainfall throughout the year under the influence of onshore trade winds. Hope we can understand, right? Wherever that trade wind is onshore, that area will receive rainfall throughout the year. So this itself is very overgeneralized. Then doesn't even mention AS variety, that is tropical, some are dry. So there are regions in tropical region, in tropical area, where summer is dry. For example, Tamil Nadu in India. However, since the symbol is available, it can be used. Monsoon climate is different than tropical east coast climate. Monsoon climate means heavily concentrated summer rainfall and characterized by reversal of wind. But all the areas in this zone do not experience reversal of wind. There is not much evidence of monsoon in the southern hemisphere. His idea of finding basis of his classification has both merits and demerits. What did he use? Basis, temperature, mainly, precipitation, rarely. That means only to assign B climate, that is dry climate. Rest are primarily temperature. So what does you do here? What do you do here? Temperature, positive side of his choosing basis, and precipitation are the two most important observed climatic elements affecting a region. Right? This makes classification more appealing. And simple as well. Negative side, he ignores all the other components of the climate which makes it unsuitable for even the meteorologist. That is weather forecasting. Can't be done with this classification, as he ignores air mass, jet streams, pressure, winds, etc., It is climatic elements affecting a region. His belief that vegetation is the best index of the impact of overall climate is only partially true, as vegetation itself is affected by various other physical factors like soil, nature of rocks, slopes, etc. नहीं, ज़्यादा टफ तो नहीं है इसको समझना भी. Irrigation, then the moment you allow a human to interfere, तो फिर सारी चीज़ destroy हो जाएगी. Because there are several areas which are perfectly suitable climatically for vegetation, yet we don't have vegetation in the present day. So irrigation will not be used here, right? So now it is somewhat reality as well. However, if you look at that, however, among the observed reality, vegetation is truly closest index of climatic component. Closest, right? Because there's no better index to reflect various types of climate. Now, because of vegetation, it is suitable for botanist. He himself was basically a botanist than the real use of climate in weather forecasting or understanding of man-environment relationship. His classification is more empirical and applied, not genetic, not an ideal classification. if the causative factor is ignored, the utility of classification is highly restricted. This reduces the horizon of his classification. It does not really suit the geographers who are more interested in the genetic aspect than the empirical aspect. Though micro level classification can be done with smaller letter symbols, it becomes much more complex. That's all for Koppen classification.
So when we are saying that it's more empirical and applied and not genetic, so one negative element we are highlighting. What can be the positive associated?
Empirical is the positive, that it can be easily comprehended, communicated.
And whatever zone you have mentioned it fully, except for that AS part.
No, even that zone is not mentioned fully. Like AM we have already talked about. Look at the CF. CF is basically China climate. China climate receives rainfall throughout the year, right? But all the areas of that region does not necessarily receive rainfall throughout the year. Then he doesn't talk about the causative factors here also. Why an area which is experiencing the two wind system will receive rainfall throughout the year? That is primarily not because of climate but because of landfall. हमने देखा है उस चीज को, I hope you remember. China climate, because of the shifting of pressure belts to wind system, so both the wind will be onshore in that region. Shape of the continent is the reason behind that.
So he has ignored the shape.
Completely ignored that. Even highlands. So highlands are one of the most important factor affecting the two. ये लिख सकते हो ये highlands में. Though he has classified, though he has separated the highland as an important factor, here though he has separated the highland as an important factor, to produce a climatic region, he doesn't talk about the variety of highlands and the climate highlands and a larger variety of climate found in two similar types of highland and within the highland itself. समझ में आया? बढ़िया सा एग्जाम्पल ले लो, लद्दाख प्लेटू, राइट? The leeward side of a particular same range, right? Even the temperature on the valley and the mountain. He has talked about two observed variation. The most important observable element is temperature and precipitation. Yet within the highland region itself, there is huge amount of variation, where slope aspect plays a very important role, whereas the leeward side and windward side plays a very important role, making some areas, Ladakh is pure desert areas, right? उसको highlight कर सकते हैं.